Sinners. Welcome back to another Tuesday evening edition of the Sin City Sports Show presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your host, Cale Henderson. Again, another edition, the 29th episode. We're almost at episode 30. Believe it or not, we're almost at episode 30. And my apologies, folks. Last week I did take a little bit of a hiatus. I needed a week off. We had a lot going on in the personal life. Got a lot going on with my football team. And, like the Raiders' tackling efforts last night, I too needed a bye week. So, we'll get into that a little bit, and I'm still salty. It is what it is. I'm going to say the way it is, guys. You guys know how I roll here. I'm going to be real with you. We got a lot to cover today. We got UNLV football recap because they're a 4-2 team. They're still very close to getting that bowl eligible season for Coach Arroyo. That'd be awesome. We're going to go over that most recent game. What's up next? What I believe that UNLV could do to spark a run. We're going to go over the Monday Night Meltdown, courtesy of the Silver and Black. We'll talk about that. Overall, it was actually a really good game to watch if you're a spectator. But it was a Monday Night Meltdown, and we'll talk about why I think the Raiders lost that game. More so than the Chiefs won it. We'll get there in a little bit. Officiating is poo. We know about that. The NFL officiating's been horrid for a decade. We'll slightly cover that, but I don't like to harp on that because guess what? There was over 120 plays in this game, and the officiating doesn't trump 120 plays that take place. Things have to happen in those 120 plays that dictate a game, not referees. There's just no possible way. They don't take away points. So we'll definitely cover that. And yeah, I mean, we got the Raiders' bye week's just around the corner. With that said, there's also going to be a ton of opponents, upcoming opponents. Some experts out there, like Jim Trotter, they believe the Raiders could go on a run. And we're going to cover all that when we get back here on the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And we're back, folks. Another Tuesday evening edition of the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Another Tuesday evening edition. You guys know how we roll. 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Vegas area, Vegas Life. Hashtag Vegas Life. We're always representing Vegas sports. IE Vegas, that is. And a lot to be said. Episode 29, we are rolling here. Again, my apologies. Like the Raiders' tackling efforts last night, I needed a break last week. Have a lot going on. My youth football team made playoffs. We're definitely doing a lot of film, a lot of cleanup, like the Raiders should probably be doing over their bye week this upcoming week. A lot of cleanup, a lot of little house cleaning things that you have to do in order to get your team ready to go. So every night, film, practice, we're moving forward, man, because we got to get them ready for that high school level, right? So a lot going on there. That's why I need the week off. Again, very sorry about that. My apologies, but we're back at it. UNLV, we're definitely going to jump right into UNLV. UNLV football is 4-2. I don't know if you could necessarily ask for a better start other than being 6-0. I think UNLV is a much improved football team. They just happened to run into a buzzsaw in San Jose State that just wasn't messing around, man. San Jose State beat the brakes off of UNLV 40-7 last Saturday evening. It wasn't a good game. I think San Jose State basically dominated the game. 32-27 was the time of possession statistics. Third downs, 50% in favor of San Jose State. First downs, 24. Nevada, Las Vegas, only 13. Rushing yards, 203 rushing yards. Usually when a team runs for 200 rushing yards, it's almost a guaranteed victory. Like, I'd love to see the statistics on that. I would almost say that the team that runs for 200 yards rushing is probably like 98% wins. 98% wins. Like, out of thousands and thousands of football games that have been played, it wouldn't surprise me that those games where the team has run for 200 yards, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the team won more than 98% of the time. No joke. If you were able to control that field that well, it's just a good situation. And, the total yards aspect, it was a landslide. San Jose State had 220 yards more than the Lobo or the Rebels. So not a great day for UNLV, but the one thing you can say is that this team is in the right direction. The recruiting class, it seems as though that Coach Arroyo is taking advantage of the bye week. He's doing what he can to continue to spice up that recruiting class. To me, this is a pivotal year for UNLV. I still think that they have the ability to get bowl eligible. We talked about this at the beginning of the year. I stated 6-6, 7-6, possibly barely getting a bowl win. And it's looking like that could be very well on track. I think there's a couple games that you point at moving forward. For example, let's take a look at their schedule. Let's take a look here. UNLV's schedule moving forward. I know that you have, pardon me, it was just here, and my damn computer decided to take a break. I know that you have Notre Dame down the road. That won't be easy. It's never easy to do that. Never easy to play Notre Dame. So the next game is against Air Force. Air Force is a good football team. Air Force, even though they're 4-2, they're 1-2 in conference, they're still a good football team. They're coming off a loss as well. Maybe UNLV can do that high octane spread offense that they've done in most of their wins this season. I think Air Force would be a huge win. If they get a win with Air Force, you're looking at one more game and you're bowl eligible, which would be the first time in years for UNLV. I think that's possible. Air Force is a beatable team. They're a good football team, but they're a beatable team. You play Notre Dame. That's going to be a loss. It is what it is. I'd love to see an upset. It's happened before. The lower division teams are group of 5 teams. They have the ability to do it. It's happened, at least the first couple weeks of the season, it was happening big time. San Diego State is a beatable team this year. I think Fresno State is a weird, I don't know how to say it. Fresno State is 1-4 overall. I feel like they're one of those teams that could just pop off at any time. That passing game that they normally have in Fresno is no joke. And it's down this year for sure, but it feels like it's because Fresno State is really young and they're trying to find their identity. So again, a winnable game. There's a possibility that we could be looking at a 7-win, 8-win season for UNLV, because when you look at San Diego State, Fresno State, Hawaii, you win those 3, you're already at 7 wins. Air Force is a winnable game. This could be an 8-win team. I don't know if you beat Nevada. Nevada's a good they're 2-4, but Nevada's sneaky good. So regardless, let's look at the schedule one more time. Overview. Let's see here. That is the San Jose State schedule. Pardon me, folks. When you look at this schedule, San Jose State beat the brakes off of you. It is what it is. They put 200 yards rushing. That's going to happen. Air Force is a beatable team. It's not going to be easy, but it's at home. Air Force is a beatable team. Notre Dame, chalked. It's okay. If you beat Air Force and get to 5 wins, San Diego State, Fresno State, Hawaii, and Nevada are all very winnable games. You could see a 9-3 season from this team with the way that they play football, especially when the offense is clicking. When Brumfield is on, he's one of the most dangerous quarterbacks, especially in the Group of 5 conference. There's a possibility we see an 8-9 win season from UNLV, which would be a massive improvement for Coach Arroyo, and I think that would be a big time catalyst to bring in on, excellent recruits that are overlooked on a consistent basis here. So UNLV, I'm still really high on them. I'm optimistic. They're 4-2, much better than what we've seen in years past. And right now, Coach Arroyo has a winning team. He does. He has a winning team. As long as they take care of business, they don't get crazy, and they do what they're supposed to do, there's a possibility they win 4 more games at least. You're looking at an 8-win team. A 9-win team would be excellent. A 9-win team would be a hell of a season for Coach Arroyo, especially if you can get a bowl game and then a 10th win. Double-digit wins after being basically a bottom-feeding team in the Mountain West for the last couple of years, that would be huge. A 10-win season, a double-digit season, a 9-win season would be absolutely huge for this UNLV team, and I think it would get them started on the right track. This is a good program. I think they're growing, man. I look at the $40 million football facility they put up. Not a lot of Group of 5 conferences would pay for that. You have that huge locker area, a portion of Allegiant Stadium. I don't know. I think this is an attractive place. It's in Las Vegas. Yes, the dry heat sucks, but let's be real, man. You're telling me you wouldn't want to go to Las Vegas if you had an opportunity to? I'm not. If a Power 5 team gives you a scholarship, you take it. You take it over UNLV. But what I'm saying is, as far as Group of 5 is concerned, you wouldn't think of it? I don't know. I like the idea. I like the idea. I think they're growing in the Mountain West Conference, and they're growing quickly. So UNLV is a team that I do believe that folks should be watching out for. I don't think there's somebody you can sleep on as a team, and especially with the way Brumfield has been playing. I think Brumfield's had a really good year. He was a bit off yet last week, left the game early. Still, if that guy comes back healthy this week, you're going to see a team that's firing on all cylinders all over again. When we come back, we're going to go right into the lovely silver and black Monday Night Meltdown. We're going to talk about Raiders' needs, the bye week, and then talk about the next 6 opponents, because I believe that this is a team that, even though they lost by a point yesterday, even though they should have won, they lost by a point yesterday. This is a team that's still playoff caliber, believe it or not, at 1-4. And we'll hit that when we get back here on the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Damn! Green team! Set! Hey!
What's going on, football fans? This is me, your boy Larry B, inviting you to join myself, Colin Reynolds, Mike Pat, and John Felipe for one of the most electrifying football shows you have ever heard. 3 and Out, right here at IE Sports Radio. Recap of the week before, a preview of what's to come, and of course, 3 hardcore head-to-head prime-time face-offs each week. You don't want to miss it. College football, and do you want to hear a college football show dedicated to all that is college football, including junior college and the CCCAA and the NJCAA, the NAIA, and the NCAA, including Division III, Division II, Division I AA in the FCS, and Division I Single A in the FBS. Well, then look no further. Join myself, Larry B., and my colleagues, Mr. H-Town Blake Henley, and Mr. Christian Espinoza, each week during the college football season for the latest in college football on 3 and Out College Edition, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's happening, sports fans? Are you a fan of Southern California sports? Are you looking for a show hotter than a hot summer day in California? Then look no further than the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, where I talk about all things Southern California sports. That's right, all sports teams from Southern California. From the hard-hitting tackles of the NFL, to the killer crossovers and big three-pointers of the NBA and WNBA, to the grand slams of the MLB, to the bone-chilling goals of the NHL, and to the booming kicks of the MLS, the SoCal Supreme Sports Show has it all for you. Oh, and let us not forget about the college sports as well. So join me, Taryn Rodriguez, every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Everybody, this is Taryn Rodriguez. Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you, Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Folks, welcome back to another Tuesday evening edition of the Sin City Sports Show, presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your host, Cale Henderson, and we're at it again. 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday evening, IE Vegas. That's where we rock this show, man. We've already covered UNLV football. Before we get into the Monday night meltdown that was the Raiders. And again, I truly believe the Raiders lost that game more than the Chiefs won it, if that makes sense. We got to go over our sponsor, the platform, IE Sports Radio. For the last 8 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, we've continued to by the fans, for the fans, and with your help, we are ready to take the next step. When you go to our website, iesportsradio.com, you'll see our Patreon link with 5 different tiers. The first one starting at only just $5 a month. This donation gets you shout-outs on all 32 of our shows. Higher tiers include IE Sports Radio merchandise. access to our podcasting university, and even a chance to be featured on a segment of our flagship show hosted by the man, the myth, the legend himself, Larry B. The Defining Moment. His show, The Defining Moment. Thank you all very much for continuing to make IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. Oh yeah. And as always, we enter the meat and potatoes of this show, which is our Las Vegas Raiders. We're in season, so you guys know that's the focal point. When Larry B called me, he said, "Hey man, I don't see anybody else that could really do this Vegas job as well as I think you'll be able to do." I was honest with him, and I said, "Dude, the Raiders have to be the focal point. It's the driving force, right? It's one of the most popular teams in the NFL. We cannot not do this justice." So we are going to get into our Raiders. Here's the thing. I'll say this overall. Here's my thoughts on the game. I think it was a good game. I really do. I think that we see a Raiders team that has a boatload of potential. I think we see a Raiders team that, if they happen to clean up some of these mistakes, the fundamental stuff, and they come into their own, you'll very well see a playoff team. It's still possible at 1 of 4, believe it or not. There's a 17% chance, according to the New York Times, that the Raiders will make the playoffs. 17% chance. I believe in it, man. I think it's possible. The next few opponents aren't that bad. They're not. But before you do that, you got to take care of your next opponent. In my opinion, it's the bye week. In my opinion, that's the Raiders. The Raiders are their own worst enemy right now, guys. So overall, I think it was a good game. It's a competitive game. I want to say Marcus Johnson. He's someone I follow. Marcus John, the Mark John NFL on Twitter. He does a lot of film study. While I don't agree with everything he says, I can tell you this much: every year the Chiefs game is always, in his own words again, Chiefs is always a litmus test for the Raiders Twitter. Never seen them so positive after a loss. The reason why people are positive is because we saw some really good things, especially offensively. Personally, I think Derek Carr played a really good game. The Chiefs did him no favors, right? He was making smart moves, smart throws. The purposeful underthrows to Davante Adams to get those PI calls at the beginning of the game were absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I think that the Raiders did a good job of utilizing Davante Adams. Do I think they need to feed him more? Absolutely. I think Davante Adams needs more receptions. No doubt about it. But we saw positives, and Derek Carr was definitely a glaring positive. I'm going to say this, and you guys call me crazy. I know Patrick Mahomes has done some crazy stuff while running and throwing and not looking, but that second touchdown pass to Davante Adams might be one of the prettiest passes I've ever seen in NFL history. I mean, I don't, and it was on the run, off of his right foot, as right-handed quarterbacks do, which, believe it or not, it's while you're learning it, it's weird, it's natural, you think about it, but when you're running and throwing the football, you're throwing off your basically kicking leg, right? Your strong leg, your dominant leg, which would be his right foot, his right leg. The fact that he did that while stepping up in the pocket, evading the rush, and he threw the ball like that perfect on the run, into double coverage, over the shoulder. Like, Davante Adams didn't have to move. He just ran right under it, man. It was one of the prettiest balls I have ever seen thrown. And this is the type of crap that I think has Raiders fans just so frustrated about Derek Carr over the years. You see, you see the fumbles, like the Chris Jones thing. To me, that was a fumble. Roughing the passer went our way. 1,000% went our way. We definitely got bailed out. By rule, it was roughing the passer. I think the NFL rules are stupid. They do way too much protecting the quarterback. To me, that was a sack fumble. And Chris Jones earned a sack fumble. It was a horrible call. With that said, the officiating in general, this shouldn't be a surprise, folks. I don't know why we act surprised every year when stuff like this happens. The NFL officiating has been horrible for 10 years. Awful. Their perception of league rules and play and all that other stuff and how it affects games, it's been off for 10 years. So And I get it, man. You're playing a game. It's live. It's at 100%. It's a violent game. It's something that, you need a lot of technique. And if you're not great on technique, you're going to make some mistakes. I think both teams made mistakes yesterday. What was glaring, and I'll say this before I let it go, the most egregious holding call I've ever seen in my life was done on a field goal try. Um, Holding on Malcolm Kuntz, which basically allowed the Kansas City Chiefs to score I think it was the second to last touchdown. That was the worst holding call I'd ever seen in my life, and I believe that was a makeup call. I'll say what it is. I'll call it what it is. There, for those of you who don't know, are penalties out there that are so egregiously bad. Not too far later, not too long, not too far from then in time or later on in the game, you will see a penalty on the other team on purpose that is not a penalty. It is what you call a makeup call. I think that holding penalty in favor of the Chiefs on that field goal, Malcolm Kuntz against a 350-pound lineman, they're engaging with each other. He's falling back. He's trying to catch his balance. That's not holding. You're not impeding that guy from doing anything. That was the worst call I've ever seen, and probably next to the tuck rule, it was pretty horrible, right? I get that roughing the passer was bad, but it was nowhere near as bad as that. You guys got to understand how hard it would be to actually hold somebody on defense during a field goal. You would have to be like legitimately tackling somebody who's trying to go out for a route in order to get that holding call. You would have to be like legitimately just grabbing somebody and keeping them from, doing a block or throwing a block in general for that to happen. And that was not the case. That was a horrible call. I think I've seen thousands of football games. I shouldn't say thousands. I think I've seen hundreds of football games, and I've never seen a holding call on the defense during a field goal. And there's no other way to describe it other than it was a makeup call. 100% a makeup call. Things were getting hostile in Kansas City. I think the referees were quaking in their boots like little baby back bees because they made a horrible call on Chris Jones and they were scared. They had no backbone, spineless. They were terrified. And from then on out, there were 7 straight penalties on the Raiders. There were a couple that were absolutely obvious and should have been called, but that holding call is one, for example, that should not have. The Raiders were penalized 11 times for 99 yards. The Chiefs 5 times for 72 yards. The Chiefs were penalized basically 4 of those penalties in the first half. The 5th one came, it was like a stupid little false start or whatever in the second half. The Raiders had like 4 penalties in the first half. Somehow committed 7 penalties in the second half. To me, and I'll say it like this, and I know this radio show doesn't get as many listeners as a big play as one of the big networks. I would have no problem going on and saying, I think those referees got scared. I think they were intimidated. I think that Casey shook them after they basically displayed obvious displeasure towards the referees and how bad they were with that Chris Jones call. That they were quaking, dude. They just were spineless. They were calling penalties. It doesn't change the fact that Chiefs had 29 first downs, Raiders had 18. I still think the Raiders had an excellent offensive day. They punted once. They had the ball maybe 3 times in the second half. Maybe. The Chiefs had 69 plays, the Raiders had 53. The Chiefs had 16 more plays on offense than the Raiders. I mean, come on, man. You just can't win when that's the case. There's no possible way. And you guys tell me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm looking at this way too hard. There are 6 basic factors in winning a football game. People know the first 3, right? Offense, defense, and special teams. Those are main factors, 100%. There are 3 other main factors that not enough people focus on. That's time of possession, the turnover battle, right, and field position. I think Raiders lost 2 of those. Truly do. The Raiders have lost in every game the Raiders have lost this year. They have lost the time of possession battle. For example, last night the Chiefs had the ball 31 minutes, the Raiders had 28 minutes. It's not a huge difference, but that 2 minutes matters when you're trying to orchestrate a final drive. Okay? I think that the overall field position was in favor of the Chiefs. Not in the first half. The Raiders absolutely dominated that first half. They were up 20-10 at halftime. 20-10. Like whatever the Raiders were doing was working. The problem was the Chiefs made adjustments. The Chiefs did what the Chiefs do. And the Raiders just couldn't keep up. I personally believe that in all 4 of the losses this year, Josh McDaniels and his staff have been outcoached. They have excellent game plans to start. They know how to attack teams. I think that their game plan without adjustments is good enough to keep the Raiders in games. But if this coaching staff doesn't learn to adjust on the fly, or at least at halftime, they're in trouble. Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs deserve all the credit in the world. They knew that the Raiders were in man coverage. They didn't run a lot of zone yesterday. They were bumping Travis Kelce, and they were basically asking a linebacker to cover a ton of space. If like let's say Travis Kelce was the third receiver on a trip side, third receiver on the trip side. So the inside guy. The Chiefs would do what they call rub routes, basically 2 short slant routes, and then have Travis Kelce do a flat route, about a 5-yard out. When you're playing man, you have 2 corners following those 2 wide receivers running slants, which means your linebacker then has to climb over those routes and pursue that flat route, which has probably already got the ball in open. Andy Reid and the Chiefs did a great job of adjusting to that. Patrick Graham and the Raiders defense, horrific job adjusting to that. You have a 2-score lead, 3 scores at one point, by the way, but a 2-score lead going into halftime. And in your mind, you're thinking, well, Patrick Mahomes has really struggled against teams with 2 high safeties who play zone. And the Raiders barely used that at all in the second half. They kept with their first half game plan, and they got burned. If you're in zone, you could send more blitzes. You could provide that defensive line more help. Again, a defensive line, Max Crosby's killing it. He looks like an all-pro right now. I think he's got like 6 sacks on the season already. 11 TFLs. Guy's a monster. He's doing an excellent job. In the first half, we finally saw a sighting of Chandler Jones. He was dominating Orlando Brown. He was getting back there. Second half, nada. Nothing. We saw nothing from him. We've seen nothing from him all season. You guys want to talk about a criminal? We're not talking about the officiating. We're talking about criminal. Chandler Jones should be arrested for robbery because the guy has done basically nothing this entire season. And I feel terrible because I absolutely crapped on Yannick Ngakoue. But as of right now, I would say, with the age, you could tell that Chandler Jones just isn't that same guy anymore. Ngakoue would probably be the better option for pass rush right now. 100%. I have no fear that that's the case. He'd be faster than Chandler Jones. He probably would have burned Orlando Brown multiple times. His run defense is absolutely horrific. I think that's why overall I was so excited about Chandler Jones coming in because he's a better, more well-rounded defender. Not anymore. Chandler Jones is washed. He looks washed. I don't know if he's dealing with injuries, but it is what it is, man. He does not look like the same player. Pass rush towards the end of the game was just non-existent. Patrick Mahomes was getting rid of the ball quick because, well, he knew that the Raiders were in man. Somebody was going to be open, especially with the rub routes that they were running. Andy Reid is a genius. Don't get me wrong. Andy Reid is one of the best coaches to ever coach the game. But Patrick Graham did us no favors yesterday. Even going to a zone package with a 2-high safety would have helped out a ton. Would have helped out a ton. Look at the stat lines, man. You had one guy. The Chiefs had one guy catch 4 touchdown passes. You take away 2 of those touchdown passes by actually covering the dude. And this is a 2-score win. This is a dominating win. I just, right now, the recap is pretty simple. The Raiders have potential. They're right there. They have to finish games. You need to finish games. Plain and simple. Fundamentally, you have to finish games. They have a ton of potential, but that doesn't mean crap. If you cannot finish with that potential, it means nothing. You're a losing team. And right now, the Raiders have earned their 1-4 record. They should be at least a 3-2 team. They should have at least beaten Arizona. They should have won last night against a really good football team. And you're looking at 3-2. Should have won in Tennessee. I'm not going to give it to the Raiders on game 1 against the Chargers. Were they in it? Yes. Should they have won? No. Every other game? Yes. They've had 4 losses. And all 4 of those losses, the point total, the difference, 14 points. In 4 losses, the Raiders have lost by 14 points total. Not 1 loss, 4. Which means every single one of these losses, actually every single game this year, has been a 1-score game. Last year, the Raiders would win those games. This year, it's a different anomaly, right? Unfortunately, it's a different team. So overall, the game was fun to watch as a spectator. As a Raiders fan, I'll say it plain and simple, man. If you're going to beat Kansas City, you need to cover Travis Kelce. Like, he's legitimately their only real threat. Receiving threat now. Adjustments. Adjustments weren't made very well. Raiders lost the adjustment battle. Chiefs won. Climbed out of a 20-10 hole and ended up winning 30-29. Tackling. I don't know if I had seen, and I hate to say this because you don't want to question effort when it comes to athletes. I hate doing it with my youth kids. I definitely don't want to do it with some NFL athletes. But when you look at that second half, and I've rewatched this game, especially that second half twice just to prove a point, there were more than a dozen missed tackles by the Raiders defense. We got people out there spewing, well, it's a complimentary game, the offense sputtered, blah, 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 blah. The offense was barely on the field in the second half. They had 3 possessions. They scored on all 3 of them, evidently. Sorry. They had 3 possessions, they scored on 2 of them. The other one was just abysmal because of the penalties that were rolling in. They had to punt into their own, deep in their own territory. But the other 2 possessions, the Raiders scored. The Raiders punted 1 time yesterday. They had an excellent game on offense. They outgained the Chiefs in total yards. How often does that happen? Right? Again, total drives. Chiefs 10, Raiders 9. Yards per play, the Raiders dominated, 6.8 to 5.3. Passing, it was definitely an edge for Kansas City, but the Raiders' run game was so good, so good. They're fine. It's like they listen to our show or something. We've been saying this for weeks. Run the damn ball, man. Josh Jacobs is averaging over 5 yards a carry this year. That's absolutely disgusting. The Raiders have their identity. It's legitimately a big boy football team. You have an offensive line that isn't very good in pass protection, but they are very good at pushing the pile and opening holes. This gap scheme, this power gap scheme that Josh McDaniels runs, this offensive line is doing a great job. Night and day different in the run game than what they were last year. I think Jakob Johnson's a huge reason why. I truly believe that. But the fact that they've simplified this and everybody's playing assignment football is why the Raiders ran for over 150 yards yesterday. Facts. And usually when you run for over 150 yards and your quarterback throws for 2 touchdowns, you should win games. What this means is that this was on the defense. And I have no problem saying it. The offense put up 20 points in the first half against a really good Kansas City defense. One of the top 3 rushing defenses in the league. They were pounding them, putting up yards, and if it wasn't for the hole that the defense was putting the offense in, this is a blowout. But over a dozen missed tackles that turned into massive yardage for the Chiefs. Killed the Raiders' momentum, man, in this game. Not the penalties, not the referees. It was poor tackling, poor fundamentals. So the Raiders need to take this bye week and get back to that. Work on their adjustments. Find a way to scheme your dudes open, man. Like, what is going on? I get it. Darren Waller had a hamstring thing. I'm actually getting really worried about him, man. I don't know if we've had a 100% healthy Waller all season. Devontae is Devontae. He looked like a monster. Hunter Renfrow is off, man. I know that he's just coming back from a concussion, but that catch he had before that 3rd down incompletion that was called for Devontae Adams, it was on 2nd down. Hunter Renfrow makes a catch. He didn't need to slide. It was a perfectly thrown ball. If Hunter Renfrow just catches that ball and leans upfield, there's a first down. The game isn't over. The drive is extended. I don't know what Hunter Renfrow's doing. That 15-yard out that he ran on the final play where he ran right into Davante Adams, I get that this is probably on Josh McDaniels because it's a horrible play call, and he's a huge reason why the Raiders are 1-4 right now. His decision making right now is a huge reason why the Raiders are 1-4. Why are you calling a play where one of your best slot receivers, who is very good at getting off the ball and getting open early, is running a 15-yard out? There's loads of pressure coming. Like, legitimately, I'm pretty sure the Kansas City sent 7 that play. Get him on a quick out or something, man. Get him the ball quick. He's an excellent route runner. Let him get open quickly. There's no reason this guy should be running a 15-yard out on 4th and 1, especially when your running back's been running for 6 yards a carry in this game. Why didn't you try running the ball or get creative? I just don't get it, man. I don't understand what Josh McDaniels is doing. It's 4.5 minutes left, and he decides to go for 2 after one of the most beautiful passes I've ever seen thrown to Davante Adams. On the run, for that matter. Davante didn't have to slow down, just perfect ball. 29-30, and you decide to go for 2. With 4.5 minutes left. 4 minutes, 27 seconds left. Kick the damn extra point, dude. Kick the extra point. The Raiders got the stop. You still had a chance to get 3. At worst, this game goes to overtime, man. I just don't get it. I don't understand what Josh McDaniels is doing right now. And I hate to say this because I think Troy Aikman is pretty close to being brain dead. I know it sounds insensitive, but some of the stuff he says doesn't make sense. I mean, he called Chandler Jones Frank Clark last night. Like, the guy's all over the board. And I get it. Being color commentary live for a game wouldn't be easy, but dude, it's a consistent thing with him. He said, and I can't believe I'm going to say I agree with this. He said one of the most profound things I could even think of, right? I was just sitting there like, what, dude? Are you kidding me? Troy Aikman basically said that analytics is a convenient tool for coaches to use as an excuse these days. There's 4.5 minutes left in the game. There's plenty of time for both teams to have at least a drive apiece. Tie the game up. He didn't disagree with the 2-point conversion. He thought it was aggressive. You're going for the win. But doing that at 27 seconds as opposed to 4 minutes and 27 seconds is a huge difference. Kick the field goal, tie it up. Play the odds, right? Your offense has played really well. Your defense hasn't. But I'm sorry. Your defense not playing well shouldn't be your excuse to go for 2. Because there's no 1-point play in this league. And if your defense is playing poor and you know Patrick Mahomes is just going to drive the field and get at least a field goal, put yourself in position to at least tie. So that way you can kick a field goal too and tie it up. Tie it back. I'm sorry, man. I don't care what the analytics say. Troy Aikman was 100% correct. The analytics that are out there these days, although they're great and it's cool and it helps teams win, I 100% agree that it's just an excuse for coaches to make bad decisions now during crucial moments. And this is a perfect example. I ain't trying to hear about the analytics, man. It was 4th and 1. I'm sorry, you just scored what should have been a tying touchdown. An excellent throw, one of the best throws I've ever seen to Davante Adams. Your offense scored with 4 minutes 27 seconds left. Tie the game up. It's already got to go back to your defense anyway. Tie the game up. Do not allow a 1-point deficit. Stupid. So we got a bye week here. The Raiders' needs are pretty simple, man. Get back to fundamentals. Fix your tackling issues. Continue to improve your blocking. All right. Get healthy, for that matter, during a bye week. That's very important because you have a big stretch coming up. All right. And scheme your guys open, man. If Darren Waller's going to be back in 2 weeks, scheme him open. Scheme Renfrow open. You're doing a great job with Davante Adams. Get him more looks, man. Seriously. Get him more targets. I have no idea why the Raiders aren't giving this guy more targets. He only had 3 receptions for 124 yards yesterday and 2 touchdowns. He was only targeted like 5 times. Target hit 10 times, dude. If you don't have Darren Waller for most of this game, Why in the hell aren't you targeting your best player more often? And I'm so sick of the slander with Derek Carr. He had an excellent game yesterday. 100% an extra game. Excellent game. He had a better QBR than Patrick Mahomes did. Seriously. He had a better QBR than Patrick Mahomes, and he had less yards and less touchdowns. Derek Carr was excellent. The identity is simple, guys. Continue to build off that identity, run the football, be a big boy football team, set up play action. It's been the same thing I've said for months about the Raiders. I've said it for months in the offseason. If the Raiders have an efficient run game, everything is going to fall into place. But Josh McDaniels has to do a better job as a head coach and a decision maker. He's got to do a better job as an OC of scheming his boys open. Whether that's inventing routes, or maybe there's specific plays that work against specific teams, specific routes that work against specific teams. Look at the strengths and weaknesses of your players and scheme those kids open, man. Matt Collins is underrated, dude. I know he didn't catch a ball yesterday, but Matt Collins is underrated. Scheme Renfrow open. Give Josh Jacobs the ball more in the screen game. Why the hell is Zamir White not getting more carries? You're going to run Josh Jacobs into the ground. Give Zamir White more carries. I just don't understand it. So the Raiders need to focus on those areas in the bye week. Get your fundamentals down. That following week is the Texans game. The Texans are not a very good football team, but they're going to play hard. It is what it is. Needs. I think the Raiders need to bolster the middle of their defensive line still. While the offensive line is good enough to win games, especially when you run the football, I think the offensive line, they had a few missed plays and they were glaring, but I don't think they were bad by any means. I think they played pretty well against a very good front, which means the offensive line is getting better, and this coaching staff is building more confidence. I think there were huge holes open, and I also believe that Josh Jacobs ran like a man yesterday. He was lowering his shoulder and just pounding the rock, which is what the Raiders need moving forward. You have to be able to do that in the late months. The best teams, the teams that win in the late months and in playoffs, they run the ball well. The Raiders have to continue doing that all season, right? Something that Josh was very good at in New England. But in my opinion, the biggest needs right now for the Raiders, you need to get an interior defensive lineman. And if there's a linebacker out there that you have confidence in, go get him. Don't waste time. The middle of this defense needs a ton of help. Ton of help. I think you have an all-pro punter and kicker. You're good there. I think your quarterback is really turning the corner here. He's definitely going to – it wouldn't surprise me if this guy still surpasses 30 touchdowns almost easily. Here are the next 6 games, and this is why it's important. The Texans are going to be a competitive team. Lovie Smith is going to have them ready to go, but you're coming off a bye week. It's going to be interesting to see how prepared a Raiders team under Josh McDaniels is on a bye week, or after a bye week for that matter. I think it's important, hugely important. Win the Texans game, go to 2-4. Your next 3 opponents after that are the Saints, winnable game. Jaguars, winnable game. I know you guys are feeling pretty good about those 3 games. I feel like all 3 of those games are I think they're W's, right? Colts, that'll be a tough one. This could be a letdown game, but I just don't see the Colts as a very impressive team. I think if the Raiders show up and do what they did to Kansas City yesterday, but actually finish and learn to finish over these next few weeks, they're going to be fine. You have a Broncos team that I think they totally owned. The Broncos are just not very good right now. I just don't see it. There's a really good chance you beat the Broncos in Mile High, especially with this running game the way it is, before Thanksgiving. Then you play the Seahawks. The next 7 games are very winnable games. Jim Trotter said it himself. Hall of Fame voter, well-known writer and reporter, journalist. He believes the Raiders win the next 6 games. I think they win the next 6 of 7. Which will put them at 7-5 going into this stretch. Chargers, Rams, Patriots, Steelers, Niners, Chiefs. At this point, it wouldn't surprise me if the Raiders are 7-5 going into that Chargers game. And it'd be a huge game, a massive game. Playoff implications, and I'm sure division implications. I personally believe the Chiefs win this division again this year, unfortunately. They were a team I was weary about, man, in the offseason. I told you guys this for weeks. Even though I picked them to finish third because of the, round table and the excitement over the Raiders and Chargers roster, the Chiefs worried me because I figured, man, with that big-ass offensive line, what if they figured out how to run the football? Right? Exactly what I was worried about is starting to happen. And there's no way around it. Andy Reid's figuring it out, and what Andy Reid does better than anybody else in this league is scheme guys open. 100% scheme guys open. So back to the Raiders' schedule. Chargers, Rams, Patriots. None of those are gimmies. None. Steelers, Niners. I actually feel pretty decent about those games. Then you finish with Kansas City. At home, Week 18. And I would not be surprised if that's a Sunday night football game. Because that won't be a Monday night game. That's the last weekend of the year before wild card. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a play-in for the playoffs. Like, maybe the Chiefs have already won this division, and the Raiders are playing for the playoffs. You would hope that the Chiefs would sit their starters, but if you're the Chiefs, I also wouldn't want to play the same team 3 times in a year. If the Raiders get going here, guys, you can still finish 10-7, 11-6. I know they're at 1-4 now, but in my opinion, going 10-2 is not unheard of. It's not crazy. It's possible. There's so much talent on this football team, and that offensive line is starting to show promise. There, Mumford's doing an excellent job, the rookie out of Ohio State. We talked about him being a possible starter in the coming years. He's already starting games. He was a first-round talent at left tackle, moved inside because of injuries at Ohio State after staying another year, deciding to stay another year to get his graduate. He could have gone out in the first round the year that they played Alabama in the national championship. I remember that year because I was in Mexico watching that game on like 100 screen, in one big screen. It was dope. I was watching Alabama just beat the crap out of Ohio State, but I was looking at Thayer Mumford like, damn, they got a dude over there. Dude moves into guard. It really screws with his draft thing. I just can't believe the Raiders got a possible first round talent in the 7th round, and now he's your starting right tackle, and he's getting better each week. Got beat a few times really bad. Actually, that Chris Jones sack fumble that was called roughing the passer, he got destroyed. Thayer Mumford got destroyed by Chris Jones on that play, which is why Derek Carr was blindsided so easily. I think there's promise. There's promise everywhere on this team. The one thing I'm really nervous about is the middle of that defense and adjustments. So simply put, if the Raiders hit the gas and they go on a run, there's still a possibility this is a playoff team. In my opinion, here's the worst case scenario type thing. In my opinion, if the Raiders don't make playoffs, I think Josh McDaniels should go. I think he should be one and done. You have a much better roster than last year. It's a must-win team or a win-now type roster. If Josh McDaniels can't get it done, this is my thoughts, and I guess I'll just kind of leave it at that before we close the show because we're about a few minutes out. I personally believe that this team is probably a 4-1 team with John Gruden. At least 3-2. And I know it sounds crazy, guys. I don't think he's an amazing person, but he was really good at calling plays, and Derek Carr was getting better and better each year in his system. With Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, you're telling me that John Gruden would have figured it out. I think the team would be 3-2, 4-1. I think Gus Bradley, another year with his system here, bringing players in, drafting players, 100%. So I get that you wouldn't have Dave Ziegler and all the smart moves that he made this offseason, but in all honesty, man, it ain't worth it if you're not going to make the playoffs. And the bad part is, I believe Josh McDaniels should get fired. He won't. I think him and Mark Davis are married at the hip with him and Ziegler and Davis, whatever. It's a tripod. I think Derek Carr gets the shaft. If that's the case, I hope he gets traded to a team that can win now because he's going to show everybody, man, when he's on a team that's built to win, and isn't full of a bunch of jokers at the coaching staff position, that dude's going to light it up. Because what we saw yesterday, that second throw, scrubs don't make that play. Average quarterbacks don't make that play. That's top 10 status, man. I'd love to see him really hit his groove this season. I think it's possible. The big thing is the Raiders just have to understand their identity. It's simple. Their identity is run the football. Don't cause problems. Don't overthink this. Run the football. And don't just run Jacobs into the ground. You spent a third-round pick on the Georgia running back, Zamir White. You traded up for that matter to get him. Do not waste that pick. Get that guy carries. If he's not going to be your bell cow, he could be in the future. He's got speed. Why aren't you running the same damn plays with Zamir White that you are with Josh Jacobs? They're the same player, but Zamir White is slightly faster. Well, a few steps faster. And I take that back. They're not the same player. I think Josh has seen the field and holes way better than he's seen years past. Like, he looks like rookie Josh Jacobs right now. That's a great thing for the Raiders. But you need to start divvying some carries over to Zamir White, because Brandon Bolden ain't getting it done, man. He's a receiving threat. He's not a running threat. Scheme Devontae, Darren Waller, and Hunter Renfrow open. I don't care about the other guys. Truly don't. Could give a shit less. Pardon me. Scheme your boys open. Starting with Devontae Adams. 10 targets a game. If you're getting him 10 targets a game, Darren Waller 10 targets a game, Hunter Renfrow 8 targets a game, guess what? You've thrown 28 times. If Derek Carr completes 21 of those passes, he's probably thrown for 300 yards. Josh McDaniels cannot be foolish about this. It is a layup. Don't overcomplicate it. Run the football well, set up play action, and good things happen. Period. If you do that, you're going to help your defense out too. Fundamentally on defense, the Raiders just need to tackle. If they tackle, that game was over before the fourth quarter. Like, the Chiefs weren't even in it. It's huge. It means a lot, man. You got to get after it. Basic stuff. Bye week this week. Hopefully they have a chance to recalibrate just like everybody else. You guys know how it is, man. We're going to keep it up. I'm still working on the video content and the best way to do that without having to worry about any copyright stuff. And I'm going to work with Larry on the best way to do that for you folks, I promise. My football season is over here in a few weeks. When it's over, I'm going to be full-time I shouldn't say full-time. In my off time, my attention will be divided or focused solely on getting this channel better, because I think that this show could be excellent. Really. We just got to do a better job of marketing it, keep producing the content. As always, folks, you guys know what it is, man. We're here every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. This is the Sin City Sports Show presented by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I'm your host, Cale Henderson. And as always, love, peace, and hair grease, baby.